Got it.
What is up, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Breathe and Air podcast, where everyday action meets extraordinary mindset. Today, we have the founder and CEO of Strong Coffee Company. He's a movement and fitness specialist, former professional fighter, and he's done some modeling with Versace, man. What's going on? We got Adam von Rothfelder. Thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thanks, man. I appreciate it. Great introduction.
I mean, yeah, that's a list.
I was like, is he gonna trip on one of these things? But no, you didn't. You got through it like the 100-yard dash. Yeah. No, I'm good, man. I'm just enjoying a beautiful sunny day per usual in Texas, and excited to hop on a podcast with you and have a great conversation. And just, I find that every podcast host has like a different way of doing things, and has a different way of kind of pulling a different piece of the story out. And it's exciting, as what I do, and what I love to do, and what I've done truly never gets old, talking about it,
No, absolutely. Speaking of Texas, you're where, in Austin? Is that correct?
I'm outside of Austin. So, when I originally started coming to Austin, it was, like 9 years ago. And it was very different city, 9 years ago.
Right.
There's a small event that was always out of here called Paleo FX. And Paleo FX was, or it still is, a paleo-based convention. And I was somebody that would be asked to come out and do workshops and speak. It was really kind of like my first, big break after my fighting career. Somebody reached out to me, saw like me doing some really weird stuff, pre to, on it, really doing much with like kettlebells. Like they were doing, weren't really publishing things.
Mm-hmm.
I wrote one of the very earliest articles on how kettlebell and MMA training translate. And that was a lot of the type of conversation that I was having in the gym that I owned. And I traveled down to Austin, and it was like, oh, this is a badass place. I want to live here one day. And it just took me like 9 years to move there.
That's awesome. Yeah, that place is booming.
It is. And we moved outside of Austin because I don't enjoy certain aspects of like a city with having kids. I like the detachment from driving a little bit of distance from like where it is that I stomp and where it is that I sleep. It's kind of like I wouldn't sleep on the battlefield. I would go like an hour that way. And, so I just feel that it makes a lot of sense for me, especially with like how high stress like my day-to-day can be, to have that little bit of time to decompress, listen to an audiobook, listen to some music, whatever.
Yeah, no, that makes plenty of sense. I kind of want to dive right into, what does strong mean to you? It's part of, the company, but what's strong mean to you? Your fitness industry, all this stuff, like what does that mean to you?
Yeah. I can tell you what I put to it, with the idea of like strong for me and the company is an acronym striving to reach our natural greatness. I believe that the word company in Strong Coffee, company is essential because it's reflective of those that we keep around us, right? So, and those are strong, right? So, I want to be around other people that are striving for their natural greatness. I want people that want to find that. And that's something that I've always been really interested in. And as a gym owner, I always had this mentality after reading some like stuff in theology class one day about sainthood, and like some stuff like with like in Buddhist practice and, ascending. And Alexa just tried talking to me. Alexa, shut up. So, nosy bitch.
Creepy.
It is creepy, man. Sometimes we're just talking. She's like, oh, I didn't hear what you were saying. Did you repeat that? I'm like, no.
Big brother, always watching.
Yeah, exactly.
Jeez.
What was I saying?
Buddhist practice?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. So I read some stuff and I was like, oh, like selflessness, right? Like the idea of helping others become great and how that in fact like makes you great. Like, right. Yeah. So I was like, oh, well, that is how I'll become great. Like, I don't know if I'm ever going to do something great, but I could help others do great things, right? Like I could do that for other people. Like my time has passed as an athlete in certain ways and certain things. And I could see helping other people like that never have achieved this like kind of level of perceived greatness, like being a professional athlete, right? Or being on TV or like whatever people see it as, I could get them to this level of greatness that they in fact would like see me as being, oh my God, Adam's great, right? Like he helped me do this. And like, then selfish, right? Like at the same time, and I didn't want like, nor expect ever that. It was just my perceived way of how, if I ever wanted to be a great person, a great man, or, remembered in this way, that it would be by helping others be great. And, and that led itself like from the gym to like wanting more, because like I felt like the effect that I had was capped in some manner. And that's like where social media became, really amazing, and like writing and stuff like that, where I felt like I was now like reaching out to even more people. And then that opportunity to be on a TV show happened. And I was like, yo, I could help millions. Yeah. Right. And then where do you go? How do you go back from helping millions to just helping like 6 rich, entitled people on like a regular basis, or 8 entitled people, or whatever it is that like these rich people that I started training then like post the show, where it's like, yes, I am helping them. And in fact, if we look at it like in a capitalistic way, like by them being healthier, they're running healthier companies. So maybe I was helping their employees even. Right. But like I knew, and that's like the way I thought of it at times. And that's kind of like what helped me deal with the fact that I was just working with 7 very high level people. Right. But these people were like billionaires and people worth, that owned massive companies. Right. Like, I think like out of the people that I trained, there was at least like 20 to 30,000 plus employed between like the 7 people, and that's like a very conservative guess, right? That's a super conservative guess. So one company alone is worth like, 10, $15 billion. So it's like, I can't imagine how many employees that like company would have. So it was interesting kind of going through this like ebb and flow of like discovering what strong then meant, and realizing that it met with like some earlier desire of greatness that I had. And like by this clever acronym, and just redefining what it is. And to answer your question, it's the ability to pick others up around you, and keep moving forward. It's being strong is like another way of saying like you're resilient. It's like you have the ability to endure more and keep pushing. Somebody can't open up a pickle jar, right? What do? You hand it to the strong person, right? It's hard for them too. They just keep going, right? Like they just keep going, and then it opens up, right? And effectively, like that's the only way you'll ever be great, is if you just keep going. It like pings in my mind like those little memes of like the guy digging in a mine. He like gets so far in this mine, and then it's like another person below that gets like one pickaxe further, where this guy like walked back. He's like, fuck it, I'm done. Which like brings up like Brad Pitt saying like, I was the most talented actor, I was one of the most resilient. Right. Like, so he just had to keep hearing no, or failing, or getting punched in the face, like I did, physically, literally and metaphorically, making my way up from like being that $45 an hour trainer to the $200 an hour trainer to starting a multi-million-dollar coffee company.
Yeah, it's incredible. It, like you said, selfishly, people don't realize it's the best feeling in the world when you're helping others. Like when you're able to give like that value you feel, and you're also helping that person in one area or another. Did that like realization come to you at a younger age, like in your childhood, or, you know, did you start realizing that a little bit later on?
No, I mean, I was pretty evolved in certain ways as a kid. You know, I had a very interesting upbringing. I found a really high interest in martial arts at like a young age. I had like a physical dad who didn't mind putting his hands on me. So my goal was to become stronger and understand how to, you know, protect myself under this like kind of like romantic idea that one day like he would be like, ugh, and I'd be like, ugh, you know, and like, and I'd be like, yeah, right. And like when that moment happened, it didn't feel fucking good. Like I'll tell you that, like it didn't feel fucking good. Fighting outside of the ring never felt good. I've done it only a couple of times in my life, in moments that, you know, one was job related and the other ones were my dad. You know, jobs meaning like being a doorman and, you know, having to like remove somebody, you know, maybe their head hits the wall a couple of times on the way out, who knows, you know? Boom. So the but like the reality of, you know, where like I have, you know, seen like my own evolution, like an understanding of, you know, what it is to be strong has like completely changed from, you know, a young age. And what was the direct question that you asked? It was
yeah, like was there a certain moment where, you know, you were like, wow, I want to help people. So and like through that evolution, it was, you know, starting at about 12 years old. So at 12 years old, my mom was a nurse, and she had a paraplegic patient. She was a pediatric nurse in NICU. So there was like a 1-year-old boy, and his name was Danye. He's my brother now. And you know, my mom took care of him for over a year, and he had awful parents that didn't visit him. They're, you know, they were crack addicts, like, you know, like not a good situation. That's why his spine was broken, because of no prenatal care or anything like that. And ultimately, my mom, you know, sat down with the family and was like, there's this boy, he needs us. And this wasn't like the first time. Like we had like foster kids, we had like misplaced like foreign exchange students who ended up in like abusive American homes, like, you know, not like knowing what they got themselves into, you know, with some of these foreign exchange programs. And Danye came home, and at 12 years old, my life totally changed. I went from being a baby to like being kind of like, you know, like a middle child. And in many ways, kind of like just like even like a side child. Because like Danye required so much care, and he had nurses. So now like all these strangers are in our house. Well, with that negative came some positives. You know, at this time, I'm like learning how to change like heart leads, traits, you know, like all these types of things. So I am seeing that like helping somebody like live has an incredible feedback, like being able to do something, right? And I became really inquisitive at that time with, you know, weightlifting, for a couple of things, random coincidences. My uncle, like this great uncle Bill, died of mine. He left me a weight set randomly. I got it. It like, I still have it today. It's like this. I mean, it was like the weirdest thing. It was kind of like, it was like meant to be. It was like destiny, right? And he knew that I loved WWF.
So I think he just thought like, hey, if he's gonna be in the WWF, he's gonna need some weights or some shit, right?
Yeah.
Which funny, he wasn't totally far off, from
Yeah.
my track of life, if that's what my great uncle Bill was thinking. But when this all happened, I felt kind of like just closed off. I felt, not loved. So I started isolating myself and I started working out. And I had ADD and I hated taking prescription medication that I was being prescribed. Like killed my appetite. And I was like getting like, I just, and then I was like, I felt like lethargic when I didn't take it. Like there was like different things that was all weird about it. And I was pretty conscious because I was going through all this stuff with Danye, my little brother, and learning all these things. And really just like, a pretty conscious kid. And I started reading these, muscle magazines that found their way into my room. And one of my brother's little nurses saw me working out in my room, and he brought me like a big stack of Flex magazines. And he was a firefighter and a nurse. And there was actually, and then there was another male nurse who was like a bodybuilder and owned a carpet cleaning business on the side and was a nurse. And he was, he like brought me like these Iron Man magazines. And I kind of like could like pick these guys' brains about like working out and, because it was not something my dad did. Right. And I became infatuated with human performance and just understanding the way the body and the brain works, because I wanted my brain to be better. Like I started juggling and taking high amounts of fish oil at a young age, like maybe like 16, like I was using L-theanine and coffee together by the age of 13. I had a paper route. I read an ad in one of the magazines, and there was a study on the amino acid L-theanine and L-tyrosine and caffeine. And, two of those ingredients are in Red Bull and two of those ingredients are in strong coffee, right? Like, in the effects of like euphoric flow state, energetic feelings that you don't feel overly like shaky. Red Bull, unfortunately, does not use enough of it for like an efficacious dose. We do, because I lead with science, not marketing, right? And that's like the big difference, because like when I launched Strong Coffee, I didn't just come from like a place where I had nothing to lose. I was like making a transition from being a highly respected trainer to somebody who was coming out with a product that could be highly scrutinized by his peers. Right. And it was like, so that was a very interesting thing. Everything had like, so many of my friends are like super high level medical training world, strength coach, dietitian type. Right. And like a couple of my, originally they weren't, one of them wasn't happy with something, and it was just like, all right, like I'll do better, but that was a lot to take in. But I mean, it all kind of started at like 12 years old, and it just kind of like kept growing. Like, oh, read this magazine, find this out, read this magazine, apply this, read this magazine. Yeah. By the age of 20 years old, or 20 years old, I was, a trainer. I was a, college soccer player and a, student athlete. And, like it's something I've just done for so long. That's why I like kind of shake my head at people who start companies with business degrees and like zero, like actual like experience, right? Like in a field, and they just like reverse engineer a market space and right. And you can usually sniff those brands out. They have no brand, it's just like product. Right.
What's one of the biggest lies that you think is present in the fitness industry or, health industry today? Because there's so much information now that starts coming out around certain products or certain diets, and, everyone has their 2 cents. So what's one of the biggest lies to you that you see a lot?
Well, man, I could come at this from a couple of angles. It's interesting. I feel like the complete knowledge base that I have between the marketing angle, manufacturing and cost of goods, and then the actual nutritional science understanding. I think that the plant-based protein movement is a complete farce. I think it's fucking ridiculous.
Yep.
I think it's sad. I'm not judging anybody that's a vegan or a vegetarian. But if, like, when you look at the way that the market works, let's just like remove all the marketing from the subject, right? Let's just take all the marketing away that you think that protein builds muscle. Okay. So you believe that 22 grams of protein. So let's just like take science. You think that 22 grams of protein, plant-based protein, is equivalent to 22 grams of whey protein, right? It's not in any fucking manner. And so what then you ask yourself in this kind of like hypothetical farce that we're talking about, you know, that's not hypothetical. What would incentivize all these companies then to sell a product that doesn't work, right? So the answer is the cost of whey protein as a raw ingredient for the last, let's call it 5 years, has been considered a loss leader in the supplement industry. And what that means is that if you don't, you have to have it for those people to come in and buy your other products. But if you're just selling whey protein, you're not making money.
Mm-hmm.
Because whey protein has become a race to the bottom. But the bottom, meaning that retail price, is not adjusted to the cost. Yeah. So to buy whey protein per pound right now, like as a manufacturer,
right,
you're like, and to go and sell it and be competitive, instead of making 70% gross profit margin, like other products that you have, you're going to maybe make 20. And when you're talking about post shipping and everything, if that person literally just comes in and buys a protein from you, you're like, fuck that customer. You're like, oh, you know, because like the likelihood of them buying your shit again is not as likely, because they're just going to find another product with like a 10% off ad. Because like vanilla protein is vanilla protein to so many people, right? So it's like, that is by far one of the biggest farces. Like when I look at like this ready to drink coffee brand that's out there, it's like, it was all whey protein. And even at that time, it wasn't enough whey protein to actually trigger any type of anabolic or, you know, mTOR, right? So, you know, it's like, these are the things that are going to increase muscle growth, right? Like adaptation for muscle growth by protein synthesis. Well, you have to have a certain amount of amino acids, right? Like you have to have a certain amount of leucine, isoleucine, valine, these essential amino acids. And plant protein is like 6 times like lower than it has to be for it to do these things, right? Yeah. And so this like ready to drink coffee company is now pushing the shit out of pea protein. Well, of course they are, because it's like a fraction of the fucking cost of whey protein. Right. And so they're trying to shift their entire customer base to plant protein, and plant protein is all of a sudden healthier. And it's like, no, it's not. If that was true, you'd stop eating meat.
Yeah.
Right. And I promise you, the founders of that company won't stop eating meat. Right.
Yeah.
Or won't stop taking whey protein shakes to fuel their muscles, because they know, in fact, and like, you know, you could talk to like Dr. Gabrielle Lyon or Dr. Andy Galpin or Dr. Sean Baker, all these people with fucking MDs, you know, in nutritional science, you know, that do muscle biopsies. And it's like, plant protein does not work the way it needs to work to preserve muscle mass and build muscle, right? And muscle is essential to dispose of glucose, right? So it's like, if you want, so it's like, I think the second, you know, biggest thing is like sugar not all sugars are the same, right? Like not all sugars are the same. No, you don't need a shitload of carbohydrates and sugars, but
Right.
like it's okay to have some. I don't think that keto is like, I don't think that, like if you look at like strict keto, right? Somebody like me is like supposed to have like less than like 70 grams of protein a day. I'm 210 pounds. If I had less than 70 grams of protein a day, I would wither away into a 186 skinny fat version of myself, right? Like not sexy, you know, and I just wouldn't feel good. I lose so much strength. I'm reminded, and you know, and then like while I'm on like little kickers, like intermittent fasting, right? I think we're doing it backwards, if you ask me, right?
Yeah,
it just doesn't actually cater to the social norm. So the people that popularize intermittent fasting flip the script so they can sell a fucking book and sell an entire coffee product, right? Like I believe in breakfast. Let's just be fucking clear, right? Now let's be very clear that breakfast is the first meal. It's not the first meal of the day. It's an action, right? You're breaking a fast.
Right.
And it's effectively the most important thing possibly you do in your day to set hormones properly, right? All these different micro pieces of your biology rely on what it is you're consuming. Like if what you're watching can fuck your brain up, I'm pretty sure what you're eating or not eating could fuck your body up as like a whole, right? So it's when I think about fasting, I think that we should be if in fact what we call this fasting, we then in fact should be reverse intermittent fasting, right? Which is like, I started writing a small like pamphlet on like what I call the RIF diet, RIF, right? Reverse intermittent fasting. And the idea was that you still have an 8-hour window, but you're eating in the morning till like 3 p.m. and then you're done, right? So it's like, you know, you're eating from, or I'm sorry, like 6 to 2, right? So from like 6 to 2 or 5 to 1, right? So you get the same 8-hour window, but it's through the time that you're front loading your day and you have the caloric function to carry you through the rest of the day. Everybody is like, oh, but I feel so good intermittent fasting. I'm like, no, you feel fear. Like you feel an induced state of flow that is triggered by a small amount of cortisol to make sure that you fucking survive. Right? Like, because like before all this cool shit, you know, like these computers and like all this, like we had to worry about a fucking tiger. Right? Like
exactly.
I mean, when I had a gym, I had a tiger like up in the rafters. And I used to be like, yo, if you can't escape that, you're fucked. Right. And it was like the idea of like being able to get over the bar. It was like kind of like a functional test we did in the gym. It's like, there's like 3 different versions of the muscle up on a bar. You have to be able to do one of them so you could escape the tiger. And it's like every day we're all trying to kind of like it's either escape it or chase it. And effectively, I choose to break my fast not first thing in the morning. I drink some water. I have some apple cider vinegar. I kind of just get like my body moving. I call it like my locomotive, right? Like this pre-locomotive state where I'm, right? And it's like I just throw the coal on, right? And that train starts fucking chugging. And by the time like 1, 2 o'clock comes and I have 3,000 calories in, like I'm good, like for the rest of the day. When my kids get home, like they're still gonna eat dinner and stuff like that. But like we don't need to eat. Like sometimes we will on accident, but like effectively, like it's something that like when you look at, it makes the most sense. And there's just so much kind of like convenience marketing. Let's just call it that, like convenience to your product you're trying to sell. You know, it's just kind of like taking science, you know, like when you listen to these people, and I say people loosely, a lot of them sound like just absolute assholes. Like, when you hear these people talk about like studies, and then you hear how studies are actually used and conducted, and like how points are like variables and like these different things, and then like this n=1 kind of like mentality. It's like, no, that doesn't work. It's like we're all individuals with individual needs. Yeah. But what I do know is that there are certain things that your body needs, and we try to fight it so that we can sell something. Right? It's like every time somebody's talked, like, I'm not trying to sell shit right now. Like, other than coffee, which has protein in it, I guess, but like at the same time, like I don't fit, like what I'm saying is I have nothing in it to tell somebody that keto isn't good, or like that keto isn't like the full answer, right? And that's not to attack like somebody's like golden goose that they got them to like where they are, because like a lot of people will take it that way that are listening, that are keto or something. I'm saying that it's not like the end all. It's a tool. It's a tool, right? And once you use that tool, right, you like, hey, if you're gonna like take a tile floor and you're gonna chip it off, you're gonna use a fucking big chisel to get the initial shit off. Like, that's keto. It's a big chisel. It's like, okay, here we go. Like, no more carbs and fibers, and you're just proteins and fats, and you're just gonna chisel off. But like, you're gonna get down to a point on this floor that you're gonna have to get out the fine grade sandpaper. Right. And like what that means is like the nuances that protein has to have a certain amount per pound, right? Or that your calories do actually matter, because certain diseases that we directly associate to red meat are not actually, in fact, because of the red meat. It's because of the over-calorie consumption and the things inside the red meat that are overly consumed. It's like there's a whole thing that like Dr. Gabrielle was talking, it talks about, that's like super fascinating with like caloric consumption, and like we really do need to like make sure that we do not overly consume. And there's been books written on it, like Eat More, Die Sooner.
Yeah.
Right. So it's like bodybuilders who eat massive amounts of calories, they're not dying, I don't think, because of steroids.
Right.
In their 50s. I don't think so. I think they're dying from heart disease related to the amount of calories that they ingest.
Is that because their body can't like rest and recover? It's just constantly going, or?
Well, like there's a lot of byproducts and enzymes in meats, right? Like, and vegetables, right? Like the plant paradox is like all about like all the anti-nutrients that are in plants, right? Like if you're somebody who loves fucking eating nuts and you don't soak your nuts, or your nuts aren't sprouted, you're ingesting a high amount of phytic acid. Well, phytic acid keeps your body from digesting or absorbing calcium, magnesium, and zinc, right? So do you think those sound important, right? Yeah, like magnesium is essential. Yeah. And people want to talk about magnesium depletion from drinking coffee like weird health Nazis, and they're eating like nuts, and you're like, yeah, there might be a little depletion, but it doesn't stop it from completely absorbing, right? And that's just like, that's in every bread, right? That's in every flour, that's in every nut. It's, phytic acids, these enzyme inhibitors. And then you have like in meats, you have like lauric acid that's like found in chicken. Hey, you eat a lot of fucking chicken, it can eat a hole in your stomach, right? I believe this about animals. If they were slow, they were meant to be killed.
Yeah.
If they were fast, they were meant to be killed only if need be.
Yeah.
Right? Like, I don't think that we were meant to go out into the ocean and hunt shark.
No.
Right?
Yeah.
No. Whale, yeah. Like, they would like just sit on top of the fucking water. Like these humpback whales. It's like, well, you're just gonna stand there. Right. And I'm making candles with your ass. Right? Like whatever Moby Dick did. But why did he want that whale so bad, man?
Yeah.
It's a euphemism. It's a euphemism.
The real mystery.
Yeah, it's the real mystery. He was selling candles. Yeah, so I mean, I think that we where was I?
No, we were just talking about animals. Yeah. And I think that's a big part of it is like so many conversations are around, oh, you don't need to eat red meat. You don't need to eat this. You need to eat that. And it's like, well, let's talk about where it came from. What's the quality of it too, right?
What a cow grazing a field. It's like you watch that cow grow up, right? Yeah. And then it's like chicken. It's like you don't know which one. It's just like running all the way around, and then it's like you have the cow, and it's just like standing right there, and you're like, God, you've just been eating so good, and then you just go up to it, and you just bang whatever is your tool of choice, and now you have meat for like a year. There's a great book, like. And I say all this with like full respect of animals. Like I truly do. I read this great book called Sacred Hunting, written by a guy named Mansell Denton. And he brings up this, in the beginning of the book, he talks about shooting this deer and laming it and having to like run up to it and like slit its throat. And he held the deer in his hand, and like the warm blood like rushed across like his cold fingers, like they'd been outside for hours in the cold weather. And he like looked at the deer, and he like looked into his eyes and just sat there with the deer until the deer died, and told him that it was going to be okay, and that he would like like use his meat for good, and like this and that, and he'll honor him. And very like Native American. He was taught by a Native American how to hunt, right? And this like sentient being, it's like I choose like to eat regenerative farmed meats, right? I don't really eat that much chicken. I eat bison and cow. I don't eat fish. I'm not a fish fan.
Really?
Man, it's just like, how many fucking sentient beings do I have to consume to be full? Yeah. Right. So it's like, how many fish died? So it's like, if we're going to talk about fish and animals and like them having emotions and like attachments and families and, something of that nature, like a soul, right? Like if we're going to like talk about that in some manner, well then like, I'd rather take one life to feed my family for a year than to take like 1,000. Right? Because you're consuming their experience. Right? So it's like, when you think about fish, you don't know if those fish swam over from Fukushima. Yeah. And now the radiation level in that fish is like stupid high too.
Yeah, the mercury. Yeah.
I'm sorry, but if there's a cow in that fucking field, and this field is 6,000 acres, and there's like a waterfall and natural springs, and that cow is like 300 acres off of like any road, covered by, it's like, that's where you want your meat, because you know what it's getting into, you know what it's doing. And that's like the type of meat I buy, and it's expensive. It's like, I haven't paid less than $10, $12 a pound for beef, like ever, and for a long time. So I think like Buy Ranch Direct, and there's a Force of Nature.
Force of Nature is a good one. Yeah.
Yeah. Buy Ranch Direct, I'll tell you, they're the best. Buy Ranch Direct is the best. It's a family farm. It is all from one farm. Yeah. Instead of co-ops. They have this, what they call power beef boost. They call it beef boost. And it's got the liver and kidney, similar to like the same stuff that Force of Nature has, but like Buy Ranch Direct has been doing it for like 20, 30 years. It's crazy. When you brown this meat, the oil and the crispness from like the little bit of liver and the oil from the liver, oh my God, dude. It's the best tacos ever. Oh, I bet. And so I think the quality of your meat's important. And like, I feel like there's a lot going on in the space that we're trying to divert. I think that too many people, like, lastly, that ultimately, like, don't listen to like celebrities for like health advice. Like Robert Downey Jr. is trying to like sell mealworm paste. Please, like, don't prescribe to that. Like, just buy more expensive meat and stop eating out as much.
Yeah, 100%. I kind of want to dive into your entrepreneurial journey too, because, you know, obviously you're very passionate in the field that you're in, and you had mentioned, you know, starting a gym. And what were some of the early struggles when you're starting this journey of entrepreneurship, probably juggling 6 other things at once?
Yeah. I mean, you know, when I left fighting, I was living out in California. I had just booked like this commercial, and I got a text that my dad was diagnosed with cancer. So I moved back, and, you know, I had already lost my brother, you know, years earlier. And I know what it felt like to like have like unfinished things. So I like moved back, got a job, met my wife, opened up a gym, and it was all like just like bing, bang, boom. And opening a gym was never a struggle for me. Like I felt like it was probably one of the most natural things I had ever done. And I mean, at the time, I had only been living back in Milwaukee for, you know, maybe 6 months or 8 months. And, you know, I was being asked to be like on the morning news. I had this article written about me as like Mr. Marketer. You know, my gym was called Drench, and it was like saturating the fitness market in Milwaukee. And I was so passionate about what I did as a trainer and what I believed in this methodology that I created for this gym that revolved around, you know, like this like triangle of like training philosophy that I, you know, put together. And I brought something to Milwaukee that nobody had ever seen before. And even people from like Miami or Chicago or whatever that would visit, like, had never seen really anything like it. And like, I wish that, you know, I mean, everything went the way it was supposed to, but like, I didn't have a solid operating agreement. I found out my business partner was like stealing from the company effectively, you know, like not handling the funds appropriately. Right. He was basically like eliminating all of his risk by paying off all the debt of the equipment, even though the equipment was his investment and I wasn't getting paid. You know, it was like, it was weird, you know, little things like that, that definitely fucked that up, because Drench Fitness Boutique probably would have been my first multi-million-dollar franchise venture that I would have sold if I would have known now, if I knew then what I know now, even a quarter of it, yeah, it would have been like a different fucking story. I mean, I had people interested in buying it then, and it wasn't even like organized. I just had such a cool name, a theory, like the types of treadmills I used were built in Wisconsin. Now everybody knows what they are. They're called Woodway Curves. Yeah. Right. Like, but like, we were the first. We had 8 of them in a fucking 8 treadmills and 8 heavy bags. And you would do hit and run, boxing and running. Yeah. Or you do rip and run, TRX and running. And it was just like, I'd have 24 people every day, like 5 a.m., 6 a.m. Like, we outgrew the first gym, you know, that was like a 12-person class. And then we outgrew the next gym that was like an 18-person class. And then we moved to the next gym that we went into like a 24-person type, like, you know, philosophy, and just kept on scaling bigger and bigger. And yeah, had, you know, and when I found out about between, you know, the dishonesty and like the relationship with my business partner, and my dad dying, and me having my first kid, and being cast for a TV show, and then being casted for a Versace campaign. And then, you know, it was like, yo, I'm done with all this shit here. Like, fuck all this. I'm going to do these things. And then me and my family moved to California.
What was it like? Like, how did you get into that industry, the entertainment industry? Because I mean, you did stuff with Versace, Gigi Hadid. I mean, you were in movies, you're in the TV show. Like, how did that all just start snowballing?
Like, funny enough, I mean, I was early on, 11, 13 years ago, anywhere between like 13 and, 11 years ago, there weren't a lot of dudes who really looked like this like quintessential kind of like bad boy fitness boy next door boy.
Right.
Now that like every boy looks like.
Right.
Right. Like I'm like one of like the earlier models, maybe like one of the first editions of like a guy with like a good looking dude with like some cauliflower ear covered in tattoos and an 8-pack, like that wasn't a common thing. And there was a need for a martial artist in this commercial. And I was in LA for maybe a month and I had like 15 auditions for movies. Yeah, it was wild. I didn't know how to act, but like I was willing to like always try. And I was never like prepared, like when I would go in, because like I was focused on fighting, right? And then when I moved back home to Milwaukee, somebody reaches out to me on Facebook and he's got the same last name as like my uncle and my aunt. And I'm like, he's like, are you related to, so-and-so? I'm like, yeah. He's like, that's my cousin. He's like, that's my brother or whatever. I'm like, oh, like that like makes us family. He's like, yeah. He's like, crazy. He's like, you look a lot like me. And I mean, this is like the side of me that's like not related at all, like effectively. So we're like distant relatives of some like not really connected nature. But we do look a lot alike, except he's like 4 inches taller than me. And but he was like the male model of the year, like multiple times. He was like the first man on the cover of like Vogue. He was like the face of Ralph Lauren, like when Ralph Lauren like was like the thing. Like they put they put Gabrielle Reece next to Jeffrey Reservoir to make Gabrielle Reece a thing in modeling when she was like 18, 19 years old, when she like had that crazy modeling career for a period of time. Right. And so he like hit me up and he was like, I want to introduce you to some people. So I went and did that. And I met some people in New York, started taking some photos. And then I had like some like cool runway shows that I did. Then I got blacklisted on runway shows because like one of the main runway coordinators and I got in a little conflict because like I flexed at the end of the runway. But like the girl sitting, like the person that was like there with like Mayor Giuliani, like the girl, she was like flex, and everybody was like flexing. She was like flex, and I was like, and I like threw up like a tasteful flex. I didn't do like most muscular or anything. I did like a nice like tasteful flex, and then like use it to turn around.
Flex.
Yeah. I mean, what can I say, man? Like I was just trying to be like fun and entertaining, and like I really didn't fit in. I mean, I was like 3-4 inches shorter than everybody. My shoulders were like 4-6 inches wider than everybody, right? Like when I got there, I was supposed to wear pants, but the pants were so long and my legs were so thick that they put me in a fucking Speedo, right? And like basically, I basically always just modeled a Speedo, so that was that. And then years later, Versace reached out to me. Like I was like inactive for years. And Versace and that TV show Strong happened at the same time. And, and I shot Versace, me and Gigi Hadid, and like all these great people, right? And then I went and did Strong. And then I got back and I shot with Versace again. And then this time with my daughter. And her and I were the face of like the European division of like Versace, because they have kids clothing there and not in America.
Right. Yeah, that's a wild ride. I feel like a lot of that just happened quick.
So, well, yeah, man. And the movie, right? Like me and my wife we're taking a vacation. It's actually probably like what I think about is, and I think it may have been like the last vacation we ever really took. I mean, like her and I went on like this 2-week road trip where it was before like business got like serious in my life at all. So I just was like, fuck it. Like, I don't really need to be there like at all. Like they got it. They're just, I mean, it's group fitness. Like what the fuck? Like what could they mess up in 10 days? And um, when we were down in New Orleans, she was like, we walked past the place and she wanted to get her toenails done. And a foot massage.
Yeah.
So we pull in this foot massage place and I take off my shoes, she takes off her shoes, and we're sitting back, there's this other guy there. And this other guy, like when I put my feet up, he's like, nice toenail polish. And he kind of like laughs. And I'm like expecting like me and this guy to like possibly get into something because I got my toenails polished. And I look over and he's got his toenails polished. And he starts talking to me and he's like, oh, what do you do? And I'm like, this and that. And he's like, oh, really? And he's like a movie director. And he's done like a lot of like well-known B movies, like in the action genre. And, and he asked me to come to the studio. I read some lines, do a couple of like martial arts, a little martial art demo of like how I move. And like 7 months later, I got a call asking me if I could jump in as like the lead actor because they lost half the funding for the film. And with that funding, they lost the lead actor. And they had all this other thing set in place, and I'm like, yeah, I could totally do that.
Yeah.
I mean, what was I going to say? No. I mean, people who say no because they're not prepared don't even give themselves the chance to prepare.
Yeah.
Like, it's like fighters who take 2-week notices. It's like, that's 2 weeks. Like, you can do something. Like, you can at least show up. You still got a fucking chance. Like, if you believe in yourself, you could win, right? And I believed in myself enough that like I could act. And be honest, I was the best actor in the whole thing, right? Like the main girl actor who won an award in acting at the Indie Film Festival like 2 years prior, she did such a bad job of acting that she bought the movie and killed it. It's just sitting on a fucking hard drive somewhere because she doesn't want anybody to see how bad it is. Like her acting, her and Tyron Woodley. Tyron Woodley's acting is awful in it too. He's a UFC fighter. Yeah. I feel like they should put it out. I feel like they owe it, in my opinion, I feel like they owe it to Imani Lee. Imani Lee was a WWF wrestler who died last year, who was in the movie. And him and I have this pretty epic fight scene and that I almost like broke my fucking back on. I did all my own stunts and I like ran at him and he like was supposed to do a shoulder drop throw. And like when he threw, he went like this with his body instead of like this, like you're supposed to use the arm and I ended up like going like right towards a metal beam. And the photographer, the cameraman was used to shooting like battle reenactment stuff for like Sci-Fi Channel where they had to get really close to the action. So he kind of like, he had like good perception and he ended up getting between me and this steel beam that was holding up the bill. I mean, that beam was not going to move, right? I mean, like big beam, right? He got between me and the beam and like hugged the camera and the beam and just like was like my bodyguard. And him and I both sat down for like a minute. Like I couldn't, I was like, holy fuck. Like, that was almost my back, Right. It was pretty bad. When you see people do stunts, respect that shit. Even if they got fucking cables on them, it still hurts. I had no safety cables. But like, I know tons of stunt actors like that have had to go to funerals of stuntmen from movies, and you're like all for a movie. It's
right.
Like, holy shit.
Yeah. Speaking of injuries, when you were doing MMA, your MMA career ended. through shoulder separation, right? And I
Way
heard
to
you
bring
talk.
up a sore subject, you son of a bitch.
I want to. There's this concept that you talked about. I heard you talk about this, and I want you to touch on it because I think it's really cool. But you obviously had some trauma in your childhood, and MMA was something that was, you know, I feel like an outlet in some ways. MMA and fitness, like it was something that, you know, you were really good at naturally. And when you had this injury, you mentioned that like it almost felt like all this trauma that you were holding kind of melted away at a time. You had this emotional moment. Like, tell me about that and kind of what happened in that moment.
Yeah. I mean, what got me into fighting was like when my brother died, you know, so I heard an ad on a radio. I mean, it's like a movie script. It's like, wake up, your sister's crying, Andy's dead.
Yeah.
I get in my car, an ad on a radio, I turn the radio off, try to go inside, can't go inside. So I leave, drive to the Harley Davidson dealership and sign up for this fight. And I had like a feeling inside me that like something hurt, but I didn't really fully understand it. And like when somebody dies and you don't get to see their body or like remains or anything like that, it's very hard conceptually to understand that they're really like gone.
Right.
That's actually like a really important part. Well, I never saw my brother. I'm the only one in my family who did it. They like made sure everybody fucking saw him and they cremated him before I even saw him. So I had like a certain amount of like anger, but like couldn't like express it, and like emotion and sadness. And anytime you talked about anything in front of like anybody in my fucking family, they just broke down and started crying, which I felt like was just selfish, you know, because I'm just like, fuck you. Like you can't handle your emotion enough to like hear what your son has to think about like the situation, you know, and that's a pretty harsh response, but like I don't really know how else to handle it sometimes because it is like the reality that I had to live. So fighting made a lot of sense because I'm like, well, if somebody won't understand me, I'll make them feel what I feel. And since I don't really feel much, I'm gonna let them make me feel something too. Right. And it was cathartic. It was like I enjoyed getting fucking punched.
Right.
Right. Like there was something about it. And I loved punching people.
Yeah.
Like I enjoyed catching somebody and seeing their face just go, oh shit. Like this dude hits, you know, and there was, for me, when I went through this time, I generally explain it like I felt like I was playing a video game of myself. And I was really disassociated from like my own body and was kind of like just like controlling this avatar through these things, and at times like not controlling it at all. Right. And waking up in those moments every once in a while being like, how the fuck did I get here? And then, you know, the inside me, the shadow or the pain and everything else, just like going, oh, he's awake, turn the lights back off, you know, and it's just like, and I was back out doing, you know, whatever I had to do to like do what I was doing, you know, and it's like explaining psychedelics to people.
Yeah.
Right. Like you're just not going to get it. Like unless you go through so much pain and trauma and feel like disenfranchised from like the very people that are supposed to like love you in the ways that and not receive that, you're going to go to a very different place that you almost can't even explain. And like that's where I sat for a very long time. And when my shoulder exploded, and I say exploded because like it did, it was like, you know, and it was like my, you know, AC, everything just like stretched, tons of micro tears. And it was like it needed to explode. It wasn't even like a big impact. It was like, it was weird. And it just was like, boom. And I instantly just felt like I was done. I was like, and they're like, because you're hurt? I'm like, no, because I can feel it. It's like I felt something very different. And in like 2 weeks, I like packed up everything in my life in Minnesota and just moved to California.
It's crazy.
I was like, this isn't who I am. And because I had a hard time disassociating from myself as like a fighter, I tried to continue to train a little bit and fight, and it just wasn't in me anymore. So that emotional release that I had that was all built up into that shoulder, and I equate it to the fact that like when that stuff happened with my brother, right around that time, I had a partial tear on my rotator cuff. And then like when it healed, I think it just healed with like a lot of emotional trauma built into it.
Wow. Yeah, it makes sense. There's so much trauma that can be stored in our body. I mean, you hear about like energy healing and like even just your parasympathetic nervous system when you do yoga and you get out of your mind and into your body and certain things like that. It's really a tool to utilize, your body and movement to heal yourself at the end of the day.
Totally. Yeah. I mean, one of the things that I love doing the most that like helps me like breathe very regularly and just feel very like centered is like actually doing balance work. So I do like a lot of like slacklining and stuff on balance boards and things that really make me kind of just move in ways that are like go with it, like don't resist everything. Like you can't resist everything, because if you do, you're gonna fucking get broken. And I mean, I found that out the hard way. Like I was a 475 525 deadlifter 3 times a week. Like I had to pick up something heavy. I had to show myself that I was strong like all the time, because strong meant something different to me than it does now. Right. And now it's about so much more than what it is that I can pick up.
How did you get over that mental barrier? Because I feel like a lot of people that train in one type of way, especially with like strength training, and then they're like switching up their training, maybe losing a little bit of muscle, but gaining mobility. There can be that weird body dysmorphia in a different type of way than most people look at that. Like even for acting for you, modeling for you, I mean, I'm sure you had to slim down a little bit. Like how can someone like feel that change and be okay with that change that they're going through at that time with their body?
Yeah. I mean, I think just like, you could look at it a very conventional route. Like you have a goal. Yeah. Okay. What's your goal? Your goal is to have better mobility. Okay. Well, there's this like triangle, and it's like the good, fast, cheap triangle. It's like, it could be good and fast, but it ain't going to be cheap. It could be fast and cheap, but it ain't going to be good. Yeah. It could be good and cheap, but it ain't, I mean, it could be good and fast, but it's like all these things, right? Like I just went backwards, but yeah, you get what the fuck I'm saying, right? Yeah. So I think that like a lot of people, one, if you want to keep your aesthetics, then eat like you want to keep your aesthetics. Just because you do functional training and yoga doesn't mean you can't eat your macros. Right. Like what the fuck happened there? It's like, if you just keep your protein intake at right, and do the right things that you would normally do if you were like a lean muscle machine, you'll be a lean, like less muscle machine. You'll just like, you'll be a smaller version of yourself, right? Like if you eat not fully like understanding what it is that you're intaking, you're going to have a little extra chub on you. And if you have a little extra chub on you and a little less muscle, you're going to feel very weird, right? So there are these like weird stick points, but I think it really comes down to eat the way you want to look, right? Yeah. You want to be 185 pounds of lean muscle and you're 210, start eating like you're 185 pounds of lean muscle. that person still consumes 170 grams of protein a day.
Yeah.
Right. So the other thing is like, if your life has changed, change your fucking expectations. If I have a really busy day and I intend on working out, I could either A, be like David Goggins and say, it doesn't fucking matter what the fuck you think or what the fuck you got going on. You just gotta always fucking do what you gotta fucking do. Look at me. I got a broken fucking leg and I'm running with one leg. Here we go. Right. That's like, I don't see shit that way. Right.
Yeah.
I think that there's a time to push and a time to pull back, and stress is stress and working out is stress. Right. So if I have a higher stress day and a lower amount of time to work out, I'm getting a pump is not something that maybe is like the best thing for me. I'm going to go for a light run. Like, I only got 20 minutes, you know, it's like, I'm going to change it up. And then, you know, something is better than nothing. So if you do only have 20 minutes to do some bicep curls and push-ups, fuck it, you know, do that. But like, ultimately, I think that there just needs to be some direction and goal setting for that individual, and understand that, you know, you're going to have to sacrifice just a little of something to gain a lot more of something else.
Yeah, sacrifice is huge. There's a question I love to ask. Before I do, I want you to plug all your socials. Where can everybody find Strong Coffee? By the way, I drank some this morning. I've been trying the product before you came on. It's amazing. I love it.
Excellent.
For anyone
that wants to learn,
I like the fact that, you know, the nutrient density in the product, you know, because we were drinking normal coffee, you know, it could be more dehydrating. You're not getting the protein in the morning. Like you said, the Himalayan sea salt, and then the adaptogenic factors with, you know, like ashwagandha and that kind of stuff. I just love that it's a powerhouse all around, you know, as opposed. Yeah. So I get really into that kind of stuff, and I enjoyed the product a lot. So great job.
Do you find that it mixes well?
Yeah. That was the one thing I was like, how is this going to mix? Because I didn't have one of the little things you push in and like spin it around. So I've just been using power frother. Just been using like a fork or a little whisk, you know, but it does mix well. I was surprised by that. That was a plus.
I've seen people take like a whisk and just go like this.
Yeah. That's what I was doing. I was like,
yeah.
Give it a little spin.
A Japanese study proved that stirring in a circular motion is less effective than going back and forth.
Really?
Yeah, and then changing the height of the spoon. So you're going like this to sway the water, and it creates like an undercurrent. Yeah. Not even different ways, just staying in this one way where it's like you're just pulling it and like going in a circle like this, like by like raising and lowering the spoon as you drag it, but not actually going in a circle. And it's funny because like I make strong coffee all the time, so I'm like, does that really work? You know, like I'm doing my own 10-year study, so I'll let you know what's going on in 5 more years. So you can check us out at Strong Coffee Company to get some of those strong coffees that my man's talking about. They're delicious. They work, mix easily. You guys will love them. I'm at Von Rothfelder, at Von Rothfelder, ROTHFELDER. It's like how it sounds. Everybody's like, oh, like how it sounds. I'm like, well, yeah, I mean,
how it sounds.
it's like how it sounds. And then you can check us out at strongcoffeecompany.com. We have some awesome little things coming out right now. We got a power frother actually of our own coming out.
There you go.
Limited edition, baby. We do a lot of cool stuff, always dropping some cool little limited swag drops and cups, but always bringing the heat with our coffee.
Yeah, absolutely. I saw you had Andrew Schultz promoting the juice. How did you fly that? That's pretty cool.
That is pretty cool, isn't it?
Yeah,
man, I think that's just kind of like that's just part of my power, part of my, like the thing that I do.
Yeah.
I love helping people, and like I approach everything in like a way, like I reached out to Andrew Scholes like almost 2 years ago before he really like blew up. And he didn't really like the latte that much. Well, I found out he was like a black coffee guy, so it totally fucking made sense. So then they had the black coffee and they really liked it. His homie Jamil, which is like his lifelong childhood friend, and I have stayed in touch like that whole time. And we're like, hey, if something ever works out, we'd love to have you sponsor. And they know that we're such a small family company. I mean, it's me and 2 employees, right? Like I want everybody to be very clear. That's how small this company is, right?
Yeah.
So like when you're receiving your product and all these things, like I always take into account that there are 3 people behind this thing that is like very well done and like and beautifully polished, but it's only 3 people, right? And we have endured a ridiculous amount of pain through the last 3 years. I mean, like being a company literally starting in COVID and basically, and navigating massive supply chain issues to just dealing with like people don't even have any clue like how much like postal rates have changed. Like nobody actually goes to the fucking post office. Like nobody, right? Like if you want, like remember when you used to buy a gift and like mail it to somebody? Now you just buy it on Amazon, you just ship to them. Like, and so nobody knows about those things. So it's been like, it's definitely been a grind, and it's just so cool to be here still and to get incredible people behind the product that love it. And Andrew Scholes, they were absolutely amazing. They talked about our product so well for almost 4 fucking minutes. He like just like this had hilarious shit to say, and we didn't pay him a dime. It was, it was worth a lot, like in the sense of like getting somebody him like to say stuff like that would be very expensive, but it really just came down to like building a solid relationship and just having a good product. We've never paid a single influencer to do anything. So I kind of like to think of myself as like the gaming commission. Like we don't pay people off,
Yeah. So are y'all running out of a warehouse right now? You're running out of like how's the production side of things go?
Yeah. So we have a manufacturer, and then we, manufacturer takes my formulas and, our bags and packs it all. And then we ship it to a fulfillment center in Texas. And then everything's ran out of Texas. And then all my employees are out of Texas, but we all work out of our houses, and we get together every other week on a Monday, and we have weekly calls on Monday. And then we do one social get together a month where it's kind of like, wives and kids and, all that jazz, spouses and kids, I should say.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
There's the overarching question, and I'm ready to hear your answer, but it is, what does success mean to you? What is success?
I can, man, there's a couple of things that instantly I have a soundbite. I did it my way.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. Like Sinatra coming in just singing that, but I like to jokingly say that success for me is not checking my bank account to do anything that I want to do. Like in the sense of like, my kids need braces. Let's go get you some braces. It's like car's not running right. Take it to the mechanic. Need groceries? Go buy groceries. Like, want to go on vacation? Where do you want to go? It doesn't mean like driving a Lamborghini.
Right.
Like I've never believed that. Like I don't care how much money I had. I wouldn't buy a $3 million Lamborghini boat.
Yeah, no.
I personally, I have some expensive Jordans. I have a hard time wearing them out of the house. Like if somebody scuffed my $3 million Lamborghini boat, I'd fucking flip it. I'd be like, what? I don't want it anymore. No, but like I think success is really like it's succeeding what it is that you're passionate about without losing your moral compass and on the way, and having the ability to then help others achieve the same success. Like my goal has always been, build strong coffee, sell it, become independently comfortable financially, and then help as many people as I can launch products and companies in a way that could save them so much time and money.
Yeah.
Because of the $1 million lessons that I learned launching Strong Coffee. Like most people, man, like where Strong Coffee is today, most people would have spent $2-3 million over 2 years to try to get to where we're at.
Yeah.
We've spent 800,000 in 4 years, and we're doing 3 million plus in revenue this year. It's like that took just a lot of hard work.
Right.
And a limited amount of mistakes, and the mistakes that were made will never fucking be made again.
Right.
And so for me, I would love to be able to help other people harness their idea or whatever and find a creative solution to make it happen, and have other businesses of my own. But I never want to count ones and zeros ever again.
Right.
Like that would be true success, I guess, as well. Like supporting that lifestyle. I said doing what you love, and that would then also imply not having to do what you hate. Right.
Yeah.
So
exactly.
Yeah. The financial stress of counting ones and zeros for a company can be very, very stressful.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I talked to a CEO the other day of a different company, and he said the same thing. He's like, I'm the creative, but then I get so stuck in like the ones and zeros and the numbers and the analytical side of running a business, which is so important, right? But that's not why you started what you started, No,
man. I mean, I haven't really talked about this at all because I've been trying to think like how to talk about it. I couldn't find Chris Rock to slap in the face, so I don't know how else to announce that I have alopecia. But I have alopecia areata, and it's like you can see it where it's like I've lost all this hair on my face, and man, that's straight up like stress.
Yeah.
I mean, that is all it is. So I have Whole Foods has put us through quite the chokehold and wrestling match that has been insane. They're a very interesting company to work with. So I had a lot less stress prior to trying to launch globally at Whole Foods.
Yeah. Are you all available in Whole Foods now, or?
We are.
Amazing.
Yep.
Well,
yes, sir.
Everybody, you all know where to go now. Get it online. That's zero excuse. Or just go to Whole Foods, get you some strong coffee, get juiced up, get them nutrients in.
PEDs, performance enhancing drink.
That's right. Man, thank you so much for coming on, spending time with us today. Loved our conversation. It's been great. Good.
Hopefully I didn't lose my place too many times to make anybody be like, what the fuck is this dude talking about? But I appreciated it, man. It was a great conversation. It was great talking with you. Any friend of Caleb's is a friend of mine, and excited to listen back to this podcast in the future.
Absolutely. Guys, you know the drill. If you enjoyed today's conversation with Adam, share this podcast. Let us know what you think. Share Strong Coffee, as always, and drink Strong Coffee because it's some good shit. So thank you guys for tuning in to another episode of the Breathe and Air podcast, and we'll see y'all next week.